There is a tax you are paying that nobody told you about. It does not appear on your paycheck. It does not show up on your tax return. The government does not collect it. But it is stealing 30 to 40% of your real wealth every single decade, and almost nobody sees it coming. It is called inflation. If you enjoy videos like this and want to see more fascinating topics, be sure to subscribe to the channel and turn on notifications. And if you don't understand it deeply, not just as a word but as a mechanism, it will quietly erase most of what you build over your lifetime. Let me make this concrete. In 1994, the average new car cost $12,000. Today, it costs $48,000. The car did not get 4 times better. Your money got 4 times weaker. In 1990, the median American home cost $120,000. Today, it costs over $400,000. The house did not triple in quality. The dollar lost 2/3 of its buying power. A movie ticket in 1990 cost $4. Today, it costs $15. This is not a coincidence. This is a system. And the system works at a specific rate. The Federal Reserve targets 2% inflation per year. 2% sounds harmless, but 2% per year over 30 years means your money loses 45% of its buying power. Not 2%, 45%. If you have $100,000 sitting in a savings account today, earning 0.5% interest, and inflation runs at 3%, you are losing 2.5% of real value every year. After 10 years, that $100,000 has the purchasing power of $78,000. You did not spend a dollar. You lost $22,000 in real terms. That is the invisible tax. Here is why it is so dangerous. You cannot see it. The number in your bank account stays the same or grows slowly. But what the number can buy shrinks year after year. This is by design, not a conspiracy, just the reality of how central banks manage economic growth. Moderate inflation encourages spending and investment over hoarding. If money held its value forever, people would hoard it and the economy would contract. So, the system is deliberately built to punish people who hold cash and reward people who deploy it into productive assets. This is the fundamental rule that separates people who build wealth from people who don't. The wealthy do not hold cash. They hold assets. Assets that appreciate with or faster than inflation. Stocks, real estate, businesses, commodities. Things that go up in value as the dollar goes down in value. The person with $100,000 in a savings account is getting poorer every year. The person with $100,000 in an S&P 500 index fund is getting richer. Not because the market is guaranteed, but because equities have historically outpaced inflation by 5 to 7% per year over the long run. Let me show you what this looks like over time. $100,000 in a savings account at 0.5% for 30 years becomes $116,000. But adjusted for 3% annual inflation, the real value is $48,000. You tripled your money in nominal terms and lost half of it in real terms. $100,000 in a total market index fund at historical average returns of 10% for 30 years becomes $1,744,000. Adjusted for the same 3% inflation, the real value is $720,000. Same starting point. Same 30 years. One person is poorer in real terms. One person has 7 times their starting wealth in real terms. The difference is not talent. The difference is understanding what inflation does to idle money. There is a second layer to this that most people never reach. Inflation does not affect all assets equally. Some assets are terrible inflation hedges. Cash, bonds at low yields, savings accounts, CDs at below inflation rates. All of these lose to inflation over the long run. Some assets are good inflation hedges. Stocks and companies that can raise prices. Real estate that generates rental income. Commodities like oil, gold, and agricultural products. Businesses with pricing power. And some assets are exceptional inflation hedges. Your own skills and income-generating ability. Because a person who can command $200,000 in the market today can command $220,000 when inflation rises. The salary adjusts, imperfectly and slowly, but it adjusts. The savings account does not adjust at all. Now, let me tell you about the mistake almost everyone makes when they first learn about inflation. They panic and buy gold. Gold is fine. Gold has preserved purchasing power over very long periods, but gold does not generate income. It just sits there. It doesn't pay dividends. It doesn't grow earnings. It doesn't expand. It just tracks inflation, more or less, over centuries. That is not wealth building. That is wealth preserving. Two completely different goals. The person who wants to preserve what they have buys gold. The person who wants to grow what they have buys productive assets. For most people at most stages of wealth building, productive assets are the right answer. The gold comes later, as part of diversification, not as the primary strategy. Here is the third layer. Debt and inflation have an interesting relationship that most people get backwards. Most people think debt is always bad. But certain debt, under certain conditions, is actually an inflation hedge. Here is why. If you borrow $300,000 at a fixed 3% interest rate to buy a house, and inflation runs at 5% per year, the real value of your debt is shrinking every year. The debt shrank in real terms. Meanwhile, the house you bought with that debt went up in nominal value because everything goes up in nominal value when inflation runs. This is why real estate as an asset class has historically performed so well for ordinary people. Not because houses are magical, but because they allow you to borrow in today's dollars and repay in tomorrow's cheaper dollars while holding an asset that appreciates. The wealthy understand this relationship deeply. They use fixed-rate debt strategically. They borrow to buy productive assets when rates are low, and they let inflation do the work of reducing the real burden of their debt over time. The invisible tax has 4 rules. Rule 1. Idle cash always loses. Never keep more cash than you need for 3 to 6 months of expenses. Everything beyond that should be deployed into assets. Rule 2. The longer the time horizon, the more damaging the invisible tax becomes. A 1% difference in real return compounded over 40 years is the difference between retiring comfortably and retiring with almost nothing. Rule 3. Asset selection matters more than timing. Trying to time markets to beat inflation almost never works. Consistent allocation to broadly diversified productive assets almost always does. Rule 4. Tax efficiency is part of the equation. Holding assets in tax-advantaged accounts like a Roth IRA or 401k removes one layer of the invisible tax. Money that compounds without annual tax drag grows significantly faster over decades. Most people spend their entire lives running from one visible expense to another. The rent, the car payment, the credit card. And the invisible tax runs quietly in the background, stealing 30 to 40% of everything they build. Understanding this does not require a finance degree. It requires one decision. The decision to put your money to work in assets that grow rather than sitting in accounts that quietly shrink. The invisible tax does not care whether you know about it. It operates on everyone equally. But the people who know about it build strategies around it. And the people who don't discover it at 65 when they realize their savings do not go as far as they expected. Do not be in the second group. If this opened your eyes to something school never taught you, share it with someone before it costs them another decade.